All right, so today we're diving into something pretty major. President Biden has pardoned his son Hunter for federal gun and tax convictions.
Yeah.
And presidential pardons. Those are always kind of interesting to look at. But this one's causing a lot of noise.
Yeah.
Because of some of the things Biden said before becoming president, and the whole family ties thing. Seems like everyone has a take on this. Everything from it's just a father's love to this is blatant abuse of power.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the timing of this is really striking. Just weeks before Biden's term ends and Trump is sworn in. And it's not just like a slap on the wrist. This pardon wipes the slate clean. We're talking about everything from 2014 to 2024.
It's like he's saying no matter what Hunter might do in the next few years, he's covered. These were serious convictions, things that could have put Hunter away for a long time.
Yeah.
Can you remind us what exactly he was convicted of?
Sure. So Hunter was convicted of lying on a gun purchase form about drug use. And he also failed to pay a significant amount in taxes. Just the gun charge alone could have meant 25 years in prison. And the tax evasion, which was over $1.4 million, that could have been another 17 years.
Yeah, these aren't exactly, parking tickets.
Yeah.
And this seems to go against what Biden promised during his campaign. He was all about restoring trust in the system.
Yeah.
Especially after the Trump years.
Yeah.
Which were, well, let's just say things were pretty interesting back then.
Right. Biden was really clear that he wouldn't interfere with the Justice Department. He emphasized a return to normalcy, upholding the rule of law. And now he's saying Hunter was selectively and unfairly prosecuted, basically saying that politics were involved.
That's a pretty strong statement, especially since some people are saying this is a classic case of do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, it definitely raises questions. Was Hunter treated differently because of his last name? And this is where it gets really controversial. You have some people saying Hunter was targeted because he's the president's son, that maybe he was hit with charges an average person wouldn't face. And then others are saying this undermines the whole legal system. The idea that the wealthy and powerful can avoid consequences.
It makes you think about that old question. Are we all equal under the law? Or are some people more equal than others?
Exactly. And that's what makes this pardon so explosive. It forces us to think about some uncomfortable truths, about power privilege and how it can be misused. This isn't just about Hunter Biden. It's about how we see justice in America.
So let's dig into the specifics of Hunter's convictions. What exactly led to these charges?
Okay, so with the gun charge, Hunter lied on a form when he bought a handgun back in 2018. He said he wasn't using drugs when he actually was. That's a felony. No two ways about it. And then with the taxes, he admitted he didn't pay what he owed. While he was living this lavish lifestyle, drugs, sex workers, luxury items, it seems like his life was really out of control at that time.
Yeah, he sounds pretty reckless.
It was. And he's admitted to struggling with addiction. He said he made serious mistakes during what he called his darkest days. But he claims to have been sober for over 5 years now.
But for a lot of people, personal struggles don't excuse breaking the law. And this pardon seems to blur the lines.
I agree. A lot of the criticism is that this sets a bad example, that it could lead to future presidents using pardons for their own benefit.
So what's been the public reaction? I imagine it's been pretty intense.
Oh, yeah. As you might expect, Donald Trump came out swinging, calling it a miscarriage of justice. And a lot of Republicans agree. They're using this to push the whole Biden crime family narrative.
What about Democrats? Are they all supporting this?
It's mixed, even within the party. Some Democrats are worried about the precedent this sets, wondering about the long-term consequences. Others are more sympathetic. They see it as a father trying to protect his son, maybe even an act of compassion for someone who's fighting addiction.
Okay, so let's put this in context. This isn't the first time a president has pardoned someone close to them. Have there been similar situations in the past?
There have been some interesting comparisons, though they're not exactly the same. Bill Clinton pardoned his half-brother for cocaine charges, and Trump pardoned Jared Kushner's father for tax evasion. But there's a big difference here. Both Clinton and Trump gave those pardons after those people had served their sentences. Biden's pardon is preemptive, wiping the slate clean before Hunter even faces sentencing.
So it's more about protecting Hunter from the consequences than giving him a second chance after he's paid his dues. That seems to be a big problem for a lot of people.
Exactly. And that's what's fueling the criticism. It makes the pardon look like it's more about protecting the Biden family name than it is about justice or fairness.
I was reading some sources that suggested this could be a strategic move by Biden, especially with Trump back in office.
There is some speculation that this pardon might be a way to take away a weapon from Trump and his supporters.
Yeah.
By taking care of Hunter's legal problems, it removes something they could use against Biden.
That makes sense. Trump is known for using any ammunition he can get.
Yeah.
And the Biden crime family narrative was gaining some traction.
Right. And don't forget, Trump has hinted at pardoning those involved in the January 6th Capitol riot. So this pardon of Hunter could be seen as a preemptive strike. It makes it harder for Trump to justify those pardons as acts of fairness or compassion.
Sounds like a high-stakes game of political chess, both sides trying to outmaneuver the other. But beyond all of the political maneuvering, what are the legal ramifications of this? Does this pardon set a dangerous precedent?
That's what legal experts are trying to figure out. The presidential power to pardon is very broad, and there's not much to stop future presidents from doing the same thing.
So theoretically, a president could pardon anyone for any reason, even themselves.
Technically, yes. Although it doesn't apply to impeachment, and a president could still face state charges. It's a very complex area of constitutional law, one that's been debated a lot.
It's kind of unsettling to think about. The potential for abuse. This pardon just opens up so many questions and concerns. Shifting gears a bit, how has Hunter responded to all of this?
He released a statement thanking his father for the pardon and taking responsibility for his past actions. He blamed his struggles with addiction for his mistakes, and he stressed his commitment to staying sober, saying he's been clean for over 5 years.
So he's owning up to his past, but also trying to move on. It can't be easy to have your personal life dissected and debated like this on a national stage.
No, it can't. And the fact that all this is happening while his father is president just adds another layer of complexity to an already sensitive situation.
So taking a step back, what does this all mean? What are the potential long-term implications of this pardon?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's tough to say for sure, but this is an event that will probably have a lasting impact on how we see presidential pardons, how much politics influences the justice system, and that tricky balance between a president's personal and public responsibilities.
It also makes you think about the message this sends. Does it reinforce the idea that there's one set of rules for the powerful and connected, and another for everyone else?
That's a concern a lot of critics have raised. They say this weakens people's trust in the justice system and undermines the principle of equality before the law.
How does this fit into the history of presidential pardons? We've talked about a few examples, but is there a common thread here?
Well, there's a long history of presidents using pardons in ways that cause controversy, often to help allies or even themselves. What makes this case stand out is a few things happening at once. The fact that it's a preemptive pardon, the close family ties, and this backdrop of such a divided political climate.
It feels like this pardon is just throwing fuel on an already raging fire.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's hard to imagine this will help heal the partisan divide. It's more likely to just reinforce existing beliefs. Those who already distrust Biden, they might see this as proof that they were right all along. And his supporters might find ways to justify his actions.
It's almost like this pardon is a Rorschach test. It says more about the person looking at it than it does about the pardon itself.
That's a really insightful point. And it highlights how hard it is to have a nuanced conversation about this. It's easy to get caught up in your emotions and lose sight of the bigger picture.
So where do we go from here? What should our listeners be thinking about as they process all of this?
I think the most important takeaway is that this isn't just an isolated incident. It's part of a bigger conversation about how presidential power is used, about the role of family in politics, and about that delicate balance between justice and mercy.
It's also a reminder that these aren't just abstract legal debates. They have real consequences. They impact people's lives, and they shape the course of our nation.
And as citizens, we need to engage with these issues thoughtfully and critically, asking tough questions, challenging assumptions, and demanding transparency from those in power.
Well said. This deep dive has given us a lot to think about. It's a complex situation with no easy answers, and it'll probably be a topic of discussion and debate for years to come.
Definitely. But there's a key difference here. Both Clinton and Trump issued those pardons after the individuals had served their sentences. Biden's pardon is preemptive, wiping the slate clean before Hunter even faces sentencing.
So it's more about shielding Hunter from potential consequences rather than granting clemency after he's paid his dues. That seems to be a sticking point for a lot of people.
Precisely. And that distinction fuels the criticism, with some arguing that it makes the pardon seem more about protecting the Biden family name than about justice or fairness.
Some sources even suggested that this could be a politically strategic move for Biden, especially with Trump back in the Oval Office.
There's speculation that this pardon might be a way to neutralize a potential attack from Trump and his supporters. By resolving Hunter's legal troubles, it removes a powerful weapon they could use against Biden.
I can see the logic there. Trump is known for using any ammunition he can get, and the Biden crime family narrative was already gaining traction.
Exactly. And remember, Trump has hinted at pardoning those involved in the January 6th Capitol riot. This pardon of Hunter could be seen as a preemptive strike, making it harder for Trump to justify those pardons as acts of fairness or compassion.
It's a high-stakes game of political chess, with both sides trying to outmaneuver the other. But beyond the political maneuvering, what are the legal ramifications? Does this pardon set a dangerous precedent?
That's a question legal scholars are wrestling with the presidential pardon. Power is broad, and there's little to prevent future presidents from using it in a similar way.
It really does feel like throwing gasoline on a fire that's already out of control.
That's a perfect way to put it. I don't see how this is going to bring people together. If anything, it'll probably just make people dig in even more. The people who already don't trust Biden, they might see this as proof that they were right. And the people who support him, they might find ways to explain it away.
It's almost like this pardon is a Rorschach test.
Yeah.
It tells you more about the person who's looking at it than about the pardon itself.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it shows how hard it is to talk about this without getting emotional. It's easy to get caught up in how you feel and lose sight of the bigger picture.
So where do we go from here? What should our listeners be thinking about as they try to make sense of all this?
I think the most important thing to remember is that this isn't just some random event. It's part of a much bigger conversation about how presidents use their power, about the role of family in politics, and about trying to find that balance between justice and mercy.
It also reminds us that these aren't just theoretical legal arguments. These things have real consequences. They affect people's lives, and they shape the future of our country.
Absolutely. And as citizens, it's our job to really think about these issues, to ask tough questions, to challenge what we think we know, and to demand transparency from our leaders.
Well said. This deep dive has given us a lot to think about. It's a complicated situation. There are no easy answers, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this for years to come.
I think so, too.
One last thought for you, listener. Does this pardon change how you see President Biden? How do you think this will affect the way presidential pardons are used in the future? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.